Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Flashback 64. I'm Gooey, and McKenna, she's not here. Well, actually, she's here. She can probably hear me right now, but she's not on this episode. But we've got some wonderful guests today. Our guest of honor is Brian Rigsby. Hello, Brian.
Hi. I guess, what does that say about everyone else? But thank you, I guess.
I'm just a guy.
Well,
it's pretty clear. I don't know if it needs to be said.
Well, I don't know.
There's guests of honor, there's
I don't
guests
think
of
this is.
dishonor.
I don't think this is offensive to say, but like me, our guests are your support crew because we are here today to hype up, gas up, and promote the video game maps SNES Volume 2. You can't actually. I don't even have a copy of that, but I got the first one here. And we've got this is your book, but we've also got two contributors to, I'm seeing here, the first book and the second book. We've got our good pals Andrew Elmore. Hey, Andrew.
Hello. I put a total of like a dozen words in volume 2, I think.
It counts. It still counts. And we're also joined by Andre from Fine Time. Hey, Andre.
Hello. Thanks for letting me. I can't believe he let me in two separate books. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. And I had no idea. I swear to God, I had no idea. Me and Andrew were both going to talk about Axelate. I had no fucking clue. I really did not know that because we did not talk about it. I was like, oh, yeah, I contributed to the book. Oh, my God, it's the same game. Blew me away. Okay.
I mean, I just assumed, I guess.
It was meant to be, I think.
Mm-hmm. But yes, we were, I don't know if we were on the same page. We're definitely on the same game. But thank you for having me in the book again, Brian. I can't believe it.
I appreciate you all contributing, big or small, and there's so many people that did, but they're not here today, so we're not here to talk about them.
Yep.
Yeah, so in a way, you're all guests of honor.
Yes.
Okay.
It's an honor just to be nominated.
Well, Brian, why? I have the first book here. It's awesome, but why do you want to tell everybody about the series? And I guess all your books in general, and tell them where they can get the new one.
So the latest book, Video Game Maps SNES Volume 2. So it's Volume 2 in a 3-volume series. Each book is looking to be about 300 pages each. So instead of going with a 900 plus page tome, went for the 3-volume split. So in the second volume, you're going to see games that basically run from letter F through letter S. So, like Fire Emblem through Secret of Evermore, essentially. And there's about 60 plus games featured in there across 300 pages. Yeah, 65 games. And there's, you all are contributors. There's about 30 people that contributed in total. So you got a big range of different types of people in there. Some really amazing commissioned art for the cover, some original artwork that went inside and got sprinkled inside as well. Some fun kind of extra goodies, activities, articles, forward, interview, all kind of extra stuff that I tend to put in all of my books. But yeah, it's slated to come out it's looking like late spring. Pre-order is open right now, so you can go to retrogamebooks.com to pre-order that. Can't guarantee you'll get a copy if you try to order it after the pre-order. There might be some extras, but the only way to guarantee it is to get in, probably in the next few days after you hear this podcast, I would say, to be safe. So get on that. And as far as other books go, then we got this 3-volume run. I also did a NES version of this. It's currently sold out, but we'll restock that again later this year. There's a Genesis version. There's also a few other fun books, Pixel Art Metroid. There's a retro gaming coloring book. And then later this year, we have 2 more books coming out. These are going to be your classic word-only books with no pictures inside. So stay tuned for that. So we have a couple. I know, it's okay. We're old enough. We can read still. Everything's okay. But we have one by.
I think I can.
We have one by Nadia Oxford, who people are probably familiar with from like Retronauts and Axe of the Blood God podcast. Former games journalist, etc. So she's writing about kind of her upbringing with gaming, kind of how it shaped her life and interconnected stories. It's really good. It's actually quite comical too, and she has a very unique voice. And then there's another book. I won't spoil it yet. We'll announce that other one later.
That's exciting. Yeah. I'm I mean this is a beautiful book. I love just flipping through this thing. Like the map, I love old video game maps, and I also just like the way some of these pages are laid out. It's just, yeah, it's a cool thing to flip through and look at and read some of the contributions here. I highly recommend people pick this
The
up.
vibe it gave me
And,
when I had Brian on Fine Time last fall to talk about Volume 1, and I told you this then, the vibe it gave me was my favorite magazine growing up, Game Fan, diehard Game Fan. That's what it really reminded me of. It gave me that like super put together, like someone really gave a shit like vibe to this. Like
Yes.
it just has a magazine vibe and a passionate vibe to it, which was super appealing. Because like, you know, when you asked me to contribute, I was like, cool, this sounds cool, but it didn't become like quote unquote real to me until I saw your preview images. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be you know, great. Yeah,
because I looked at this thing and I was just like, this looks like a gigantic InDesign document.
mm-hmm.
It is.
That's all I see when I look at stuff like that now. Like I just see layout. It's looks like a lot of work and a lot of love went into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. That's
Sure.
what blows. I've only dabbled a little bit now I've been working in InDesign and stuff. And when I open this up, it's like it blows me away. I'm like, I couldn't do this. It's just like I could never. And like sometimes too, it surprises you. You open up a page and it's like, bam, overworld of Chrono Trigger, and it's just like, I don't know. It really transports you into another land for a second.
Yeah, I love like the really big image.
These.
I love the is it the Dracula X image? I love that one with the there's lots of really big stuff when it you know slaps you in the face. That is fun about the book as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I highly recommend people pick this up, and sort of as a fun way to sort of promote it, I thought we could have you guys on and we could each share our favorite Super Nintendo games. So we're gonna do our top 3 Super Nintendo games, just because I figured that's probably between all of us. There will probably be some overlap, but it's still probably a lot. So that's why also McKenna. I don't think McKenna has beaten a Super Nintendo game. That's a route we want to go down on the podcast.
Does that mean you're going to have me back on the Mario Man to talk about Super Mario World in 2026?
You know that's going to happen. Yeah.
2035.
Yep.
Super flashback podcast.
I cannot talk about Super Mario World when I'm 53 years old, okay? That is not allowed.
You will be talking about nothing but Super Mario World when you're 50.
I know.
I will someday. I'll come visit you in your retirement home someday. Be like, all right, it's time to buy.
Just hands around a burn barrel, talking about back in the day there used to be this electricity thing. All the kids are like, there's Grandpa going crazy again.
Show me those Aaliyah music videos that make me remember a youthful time.
But even me, actually, I did not have a Super Nintendo growing up. My neighbor did. I went straight. I had NES and then Nintendo 64.
Wow.
Like a lot of other people my age range, like especially like a couple years older, they're more Super Nintendo oriented, but I only ever saw it at my neighbor's house, and it always, just enchanted me. They had a gigantic, massive tube TV, like a big screen one, and we'd play Donkey Kong Country on that and stuff, and it was enchanting, but I never owned one. So even me, my picks are going to be a little bit basic. So I was like, let's get a crew together, because I think you guys will have a lot more interesting stuff to say, and probably more to say about some of these games than even I will.
Basic bitch picks are fine. I mean, because like here's the thing: if we go through this,
okay,
and he says like Link to the Past, people are gonna be like, "What the fuck?" People are gonna just throw their iPod in the trash. If they're listening to Flashback 64 on, they will throw it in the garbage. Okay, so we need to say
that's true. iPod. That's true.
Their iPod Touch 2.
But one great thing about this show is through meeting people who have like these more specific tastes and stuff, it's led me to like, okay, maybe I'm gonna prioritize some of these games over, some other games I haven't played. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what you all have to say. Brian, why don't we start with you as our guest of honor? What would be number 3 on your list?
Ooh, reverse order. Okay. So first I'll just say really quickly my honorable mention that didn't make the list. I'll give you my 3 that I had to cut. Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy VI, obviously basic but great games. Also Street Fighter 2, because bringing that home, even having to play, with the wonky controller situation, was all about the multiplayer. Those are my honorable mentions. They didn't make it, but they have a special place in my heart still. So my number 3, my list is very vanilla. It's definitely basic, so buckle up. So the first one for me is Chrono Trigger. It's this game, like a few of the other, as well as another on my list, is like, it's not just about the game itself. It's also about like the entry point into the SNES and like what it means to like, play something for the first time on such a capable system coming out of the NES. The thing that stands out about this game the most to me, first and foremost, is the characters. They're each incredibly unique in terms of the way they look, their personality, and backstory, because they actually, majority, if not all of them, have some level of backstory. And the characters and their stories actually allow you to learn about their timelines, which obviously is like a massive component of the game. And then vice versa, right? The timelines help you kind of understand the characters more. I always found that to be an interesting dynamic, because it's not just about traveling through time and defeating bad guys and stuff like that. It's also about like the people you bring along the way, how they grow, etc. They don't have the most complex story arcs or character arcs, but it is a video game and that's okay. It also has some of the most, at least for me personally, some of the best sprite art and animation in an SNES game. I just think like, I never like, turn-based but real-time kind of battle system. You're like, well, maybe I'll get a little bored of this. No, not really. Like every time I watch these animations and the sounds and the movement and the way everyone's kind of placed a little differently on the screen each time, it keeps it kind of fresh. But going back to the characters, I mean, there's a frog with a sword and there's a robot in this game. So what else do you really need to know? And a great sign of a game getting the characters right, I think, is like, if you could see these characters just in silhouette or just color blocked, you can recognize all of them, kind of like Street Fighter characters. They nailed that perfectly. Mm-hmm. I alluded to the battles, and the way that works. Obviously, the combinations, the combos, and the battles kept everything fresh. I always found that to be fun. You could go through the game and not even do every combination, because maybe you're mixing in different characters and doing different things. So that kind of keeps it fresh. The maps, obviously, I'm very partial to maps. So there being about 7 different times, and how they're different, how they kind of interconnect is super interesting. But the thing that actually stands out the most about this game for me is the music, because I personally think this is the greatest retro gaming soundtrack of all time. Maybe even my favorite gaming soundtrack, inclusive of anything that is modern today. A few recommendations for people that are like interested in hearing different iterations of the music. There's a couple. There's this Mariachi Entertainment System version of the Millennial Fair. Check it out. It's like an interesting twist on that classic song. There's also the album Beyond the Flow of Time. Highly recommend it. You can look it up on a streaming service, or there's even an LP vinyl record version of it as well. It's so good, because the music was so perfect already that when you expand on it, it's just that much better. And then, of course, there's other things we remember this game fondly for. New Game Plus, the innovator of New Game Plus, like, I mean, what's not to love about that? Even if you don't take advantage of it, it was innovative. It set the stage for something pretty cool that we now see in a lot of modern games. And there's so much choice in this game. You didn't see a lot of like choices and things back then, right? You have the roughly 13 endings. You have the trial at the beginning and like the impact of your choices that you made before the trial happens. And you're like, oh, there's some dynamic elements here. Interesting. There's a character that you can get or not get. Like, that's always kind of cool in an RPG. We saw that in games like Shining Force and other games like that. And then real quickly, my story about this game is that I originally rented it back in the day. I didn't finish it because I didn't have enough time. And then I didn't revisit it till about 5 years ago. And I was so close to the ending. And I wondered, how many of the choices am I making that are exactly the same as childhood self? And I bet you they're all the same, weirdly enough. I wish I almost like wrote down where did I go, who did I use the most, why, all that kind of stuff. But I'm so happy I finally finished it. Anyone looking to get into this game, it's on so many platforms. Like you should be able to find it if you need to. So just jump on anything.
That's one. Well, I want to say, Andrew, I knew when you got up you were going to come back with something. That's classic.
Over there scouring a shelf trying to find my bootleg copy of Brink of Time, which is a like acid jazz arrangement.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
I was thinking about that when Brian was talking about music, because I used to see that in import shops in LA. I used to see it on the shelf and it was like $40 or something. And I'd see it there and I'm like, I can't even think about a $10 bill, right? So dude, like, I was like, whoa, this has to sound amazing, right? It's in a real shop.
Stupid expensive now. And I know it's, famous for a reason at this point, but there's a zillion bootlegs out there. Or it's, whatever, it's music, it's on the internet.
Yeah.
It's crack, it's great, it gets you really high. So it's that arrangement album is like kind of the versions of a lot of these songs that have been just stuck in my head for years and years and years. I've never actually gotten very far in Chrono Trigger, but I sure have listened to the score a whole hell of a lot, because between that, Cross, and Radical Dreamers, it put him in the hospital.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. We just about lost that man due to this video game.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So it's like I don't want to hold that up as like a glorifying suffering artists overworking themselves to death or anything like that. But
yeah, wow.
The work itself is at least monumental for it's super iconic for a reason.
Yeah, I know that's a pretty classic soundtrack. I know it pretty well, and I have not even played I've seen the game. I know the vibe and everything. I've been, actually, one of my former bandmates is such a like he loves like the RPGs of that era, and he's made a lot of references and merch and stuff to all that stuff, and we had just a total rip-off shirt, like intentionally so, like with like the artwork from that game. Just amazing artwork that game has, just incredible vibe. So I've always appreciated it for that, but not having an SNES and then going to N64, I kind of just totally missed the boat on like JRPGs and stuff like that from that era. And now I'm like trying to work my way back through that. And Chrono Trigger is definitely a game we'll be covering someday on the show for sure. Did anyone else have that?
Oh no, on my list, no, I did not. Just because I mean, between the three of us, I figured someone else would. So yeah. I have not played Chrono Trigger since it came. I got it when it came out. I played it a bunch when it came out. I saw a bunch of endings. I have never played that game since. But every time I've gone back to a RPG that I have not played since the 90s, they always hold up. They're always as good or better. For some reason, it's just the genre that is like it preserved in lacquer. Like it's just always good. So I'm sure whenever I go back to Chrono Trigger, it'll be just as good as I remember it.
Be the Jurassic Park mosquito of its day.
Yep. I used to have those as a kid, like where you had the scorpion and like the weird, like embalmed, like.
Oh yeah,
I was obsessed with those. Yeah.
Badass. Yeah. Oh, what'd you have, Andre, for number 3?
Number 3 on my list is gonna be Mega Man and Bass. Now, of course, quick note: this game only came out in Japan, and in Japan, obviously, Mega Man is known as Rockman, so the game there is called Rockman and Forte. Okay. I'm not going to be that level of annoying weeb, so I'm just going to say Mega Man and Bass. And the Game Boy Advance came here as Mega Man and Bass, so that's just what I'm going to say. Okay? This, back in the day when it came out, this was like one of those legendary Super Famicom imports, like Trials of Mana, back then known as Seiken Densetsu 3, or like whatever. Like there was a number of Super NES Japan-only games that were like kind of legendary. Romancing Saga 2, quite honestly, was one of them, which is so I'm so glad that game is finally getting its due here. And Mega Man and Bass was one of those as well. But over time, its reputation has gotten really sullied by YouTubers and just groupthink of like, oh, this game is bad. Now that seems to be the prevailing thought, which blows my mind because I remember a time when this game was celebrated, right? I'm like, what happened? But Mega Man and Bass.
People had turned on it, actually. I don't think
I've
ever heard anyone.
People have turned on it big time.
Like, I believe you, I just have not encountered this yet.
It's crazy, man.
What happened? What do you think? They just like picked up. You said it came on Game Boy Advance. Do you think they just picked it up on that and they didn't get it, or
here's the thing. It's like one of the last Super Famicom games ever released. It came out like in 1998, Mega Man and Bass. So like, and there was a Game Boy Advance port in 2002. So only like 4 years after the fact, which is kind of weird to think about. And people think that Game Boy Advance version sucks for some reason, or that it's like super screen crunched or whatever, which is just simply objectively not true. So like I dismiss all those things people say about it. Like I played the Game Boy Advance version first. That's the first one. I didn't have 110 10,000 yen to import this game, right? So that's how I played it. Oh, I don't know if maybe none of you, I don't know how the age of everyone here, but back in the day on ROM sites, people put up Mega Man and Bass as Mega Man 9 on like
really?
like ROM site. That's what it was always listed as a lot of times. So like it was weird. But anyway, so this is not like a game I grew up with, obviously. This is a game I played, as relatively an adult, and I fucking loved it. I loved it. I went on a Mega Man binge in like 2006, and I played all four of the Mega Man Zeros, and I threw in Mega Man and Bass in there somewhere, and I just fell in love. It's very hard to say why some Mega Man games are better than others sometimes, because they're all relatively the same formula. And it's just that, I guess for me, Mega Man and Bass emphasizes all the things that I personally love about Mega Man. You have like the weird and fun platforming challenges, right? So a lot of people don't like those. I do. The disappearing blocks, reappearing blocks. Do those have like a Mega Man nomenclature? I don't know what they're called. I always just call them the
disappearing blocks.
Yeah, the disappearing blocks.
I think they're called.
Yeah,
you just make the sound with your voice.
Oh, I love the NES one. Sounds like a tugboat, right? It's like, but then like Mega Man and Bass, they got to have that. They're working that SPC 700, so it sounds more like a wonk. It's
kind of groovy, actually.
Yeah, it's very groovy. Oh God, the music in this game is insane. Jesus Christ, who worked on this? I know Akira Kaida did. God, I forget. There's like a number. There's like maybe 3 or 4, classic Capcom composers who worked on this, and the music in this game is insane. Andrew, it's something you said last year when you were on Fine Time when you were talking about Rondo of Blood. You talked about the change from like this very Castlevania music used to be this very stately thing, and then it went into what you called jazz odysseys with like Super Castlevania 4, right? That's what Mega Man and Bass is. We have gotten into the chill 90s jazz era, and it is fantastic. It's incredible stuff.
Yeah, we got Toshihiko Horiyama, Naoshi Mizuta, and Akari Kaida.
Yeah, I knew Akira Kaida. I couldn't remember the rest. Thank you. But yeah, that late 90s chill. Oof, my God, chills up my spine. I tell you what. All the power-ups are fun to use in Mega Man and Bass, which is not always the case in Mega Man. Not always. So like, in this one, it is excellent. People who were turned off by Mega Man 8 at the time, myself included, now I really like Mega Man 8. But at the time, I didn't get it. That's just not really what I wanted from a Mega Man game. Mega Man and Bass is what I would have wanted. And it's funny because Mega Man and Bass uses like the sprites from Mega Man 8 and like other stuff. And that's why, that's also why it kind of gets like a weird rap. It's like people think it's like a weird port of Mega Man 8 or like some sort of side game because it's not numbered. And I'm like, oh my God, Mega Man reused assets? That's never happened before in the history of man. Oh my God, right? Call the police, right? So, but yeah, Mega Man and Bass is just an incredible game. It's tough. Yeah, it goes a little overboard sometimes. There's things that are a little tough, but you know what? They knew it, because sometimes in really tough sections, they give you an infinitely respawning one-up before like a tough boss or something. So it's like you can basically just keep trying this as many times as you want without any real penalty. Anyway, yeah, Mega Man and Bass, incredible stuff. Again, obviously not a game I grew up with, but just an incredible Mega Man game. I don't know if it's my favorite Mega Man game, but it definitely is my favorite of that era for sure. So yeah, Mega Man and Bass, definitely a Super Famicom classic.
Okay, yeah, Super Famicom. We gotta.
I love that you go from the first 6 on NES and Famicom, and then 7 on Super Nintendo and Famicom, and then 8 on PlayStation and Saturn, and then what is effectively a follow-up to 8 goes back to 16-bit. The year the Dreamcast comes out, it's just amazing.
You know, Inafune said like he wanted to make like Mega Man and Bass because not every kid had a PlayStation yet, but there was a lot of Super Famicoms around. I'm like, so what, are the children just not allowed to? You put that jumping flash down, like you are not allowed to play. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like the PS1 was popular enough, but what do I know, huh? Inafune, everybody.
I feel like with certain old games, especially ones that are like kind of more obscure, like I think sometimes like younger generations of people are more willing to like try and get into like ones that they have been told are like the absolute classics, you know, like Symphony of the Night or something would be one where like someone might do that, but then you maybe take like some other Castlevania game, and even if it's really good, they might play it for a little bit and be like, I don't know, it's weird, and then they just try to justify why it's like obscure. You know what I mean? Like they create like a narrative
from doing the homework, basically.
Yeah.
So
yes, yeah. So I think maybe that I haven't played that Mega Man game, but I could imagine that being the case. Like I've never heard of this. This never came out here. Whatever. You know, it's probably obscure for a reason that I don't quite understand.
The guy that I remember talking most about this, that I heard from it about, was a coworker many years ago who was obsessed with the GBA port back in the day. But this was also a guy that just played a lot of like those classic fan translations for the bigger Super Nintendo RPGs. You know, Final Fantasy V, Live Alive, stuff like that. And was extremely, extremely into this one. And I think a lot of that was because it didn't come out here. So it was like, I get like a new fun classic Mega Man game in adulthood that I didn't know about when I was a kid, which, to be fair, is a pretty great gift, IMO.
Yeah, sure is. Yeah. Obviously, I couldn't wait because like when Capcom was porting everything like Breath of Fire, they did like a Super Ghouls and Ghosts port, right? To like, they were doing everything on Game Boy Advance. I'm like, Mega Man and Bass? When? And then it actually happened, you know? Wow. So I was kind of like, please do this one too, since we never got that shit. And they did. I loved it.
Nice. Oh, that's sweet. Andrew, what's your number 3?
Yeah, so I attempted to impose a few extraneous rules on myself as usual to try and help narrow this down, because I think let me try to break this down. I want to pick something that wasn't obvious, because otherwise my list is, you know, like it's Final Fantasy VI, Super Metroid, and like Contra 3 or something, and you know, that's boring. These games have been talked about to death. And I wanted to grab something that I had physically on a shelf, and then that I had played enough that I felt like I could speak to. So I grabbed some weird stuff that I just happened to like a lot that I was hoping maybe might not get picked otherwise. And my number 3 that I want to start off with here is from our friends over at Genki and Bulletproof Software. We have Shutoku Battle 2.
Bulletproof Software worked on that?
Well, they published it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, so this is the follow-up to Shutoku Battle 94, Drift King Shutoku Battle 94. And since that series just came back with a kind of relaunch of Tokyo Extreme Racer in early access on PC a couple weeks ago, and I've wrung every drop out of that thing, and I'm just so beyond excited and happy to see like life from Genki, and for any of this to be happening and this series to be back and alive, and I'm just so excited. And I wanted to shout out some of the early stuff, because the first one in 94 is a good, cool Mode 7 racing game with a lot of cool stuff in it. But I think the second one just kind of goes the extra mile to refine a lot of those things and gives you a lot more opportunities to get in the weeds with like car customization and stuff like that. But then after you deal with all of the nerdy stuff, it's then taking your car out onto test tracks that are like actual closed circuit courses. And you can drive around either just doing time attacks or just practicing or against a single opponent and do like a duel. And it's doing the thing that you see in a lot of Mode 7 racers on that console where the screen is bisected across the middle horizontally, and the bottom half is where you're racing, and the top half is a bunch of... it's a one-player game, so instead of splitting it up into split-screen multiplayer, it's the top half gives you a bunch of cool like dynamic camera angles from preset positions along the map. So when you drive by it, you're getting these live like extra angles that are... basically only there for other people watching, I guess, because it's not like you can drive while looking at them that way. It's like holding down circle in GTA 4 or whatever. But aside from those test courses, there are all the other tracks are just duels against like known established professional race drivers in Japan, and all those other courses are other highways and stuff along the Shoto Express. And it really lays the groundwork for what that series would eventually become when it got kind of... sorry, I was just saying bye to my wife before she left on an errand there. Anyway, there were further entries on PS1 and Saturn and stuff, but it didn't really come into its own until it got kind of soft rebooted, more or less, on the Dreamcast, which is where we got Tokyo Extreme Racer here. I think it's Tokyo Highway Challenge in Europe. I don't remember what the names are, but it's one of those racing games that get different publishers and different territories always have wildly different names all over the place. Anyway, all that to say, this is one of the oldest actual proper ass street racing games about tuning your car and breaking the law. And it also just feels really good. Like for a manual transmission racing game on the Super Nintendo, in Mode 7, it's shockingly satisfying to control, I think. I don't know. I've played a lot of Mode 7 racers, and most of them feel pretty heavily limited by their time and their hardware. It feels like they're trying to shoot for something they can't quite get, aside from like sprite scalers. So you have stuff like pole position and outrun for decades and decades and decades, and it's really not until like 93, 94 around the time you get like Virtua Racing and Ridge Racer and Daytona and Sega Rally and like all this stuff in the early 90s, it starts building up like these high-tech 3D, very high-budget, polished racers. But before that, everything is very, very restricted. So for a lot of people that are really into racing games, that's an entire genre of interactivity that started in the early to mid-90s, basically. So anything before that that is good and easy to go back to and recommend to people that's not just F-Zero or Mario Kart or whatever, which are both fantastic Super Nintendo games, obviously, but having other things to point to that are also like, no, this is like actually good. It's not just good for a Super Famicom game or whatever, I think is valuable. And it's just a game that I've come back to a whole lot over the years because I like it and it's fun. I hope that's a good enough reason. The music's
reason
banging,
that
too.
matters.
There's like slap bass samples all over the place.
The ding.
Yeah, that's a great example of like you bringing a game to my attention that I'm like, this sounds like it absolutely whips ass. Like, why have I've never even heard of this?
That's what I'm here for.
It's, yeah.
The thing that always
Shot
comes
the
to
top of my
mind for
list.
me is like, I mean, I know this is always an impossible question to answer, but like, I just don't understand. Like, why would a US publisher look at a game like that and be like, nah, you know what I mean? I just wonder.
The opportunity.
Yeah, they may have not had the opportunity, right? But let's suppose they did. I just can't imagine anyone looking at this and being like, I don't think so, right? But I don't know. Again, they probably didn't have the opportunity. But again, obviously an impossible question to answer. But it's just, Mega Man Base. I get it. It was 1998. Like that's not happening, right? But like, right. So, but Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because a lot of racing games that were getting ported over in the 16-bit era started as like Amiga games. There's a lot of European
Mhm.
stuff. There's a lot of like Lotus Turbo Challenge and stuff like that.
Yep.
Or like even Top Gear series and stuff.
That's what I was gonna say,
16-bit
Top Gear.
iterations. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And then a lot of the Japanese stuff that made it over was the bigger like first party or the more established third parties that already had a foothold in the Western markets from the 80s. So stuff from like Genki and BPS is not necessarily the kind of thing that's getting shopped around at trade shows to get localized and brought in front of I mean, they might have. I'm making assumptions here. For all I know, they could have been desperately trying to get somebody to go through and take this job. But also, like street racing culture had not broken into pop culture stuff yet at the time either, and that's true for this entire series up until the Dreamcast game comes out. And even that is, that's still pre like Fast and Furious and stuff, like it's still before there's this very like commonly shared language of tuner cars weaving in and out of traffic and, endangering lives in a cool way. That's
cool. It's okay because it's cool. It has to be cool.
Exactly. Precisely. That's how that works.
Otherwise, it's okay to endanger your life if it's cool.
I've always said this. These are words I've always lived by. But yeah, no, there is traffic on the road in this game as well, which is kind of wild to see for a Super Nintendo game. It's like, all right, don't hit that family minivan.
Yeah, I think I've said before, like when I see those type of cars in like real life and stuff, I'm like, fuck this guy or whatever. But when I see it, when I watch, Too Fast, Too Furious, I'm like, and I see all those cool colored cars racing at the beginning and jump the bridge and everything. I'm like, this is the coolest shit that's ever existed.
It is.
So,
that's the cinematic power of John Singleton. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Damn right.
Oh yeah.
That movie gets a lot better, I think, when you look at it through that lens. That's a completely different podcast, but
I like that movie. Yeah. But yeah, we can't get into that. Much like Interpol. We can't get into that. But
I'm ready.
We should probably move on.
Yeah.
Well, my three. Am I allowed to say Star Fox 2? Is that allowed?
Sure, I think so.
Okay,
it's been officially released.
Yeah. Speaking of late Super Nintendo releases,
yeah,
way later than '98.
What was that? Was it 2018?
18.
Okay.
18.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, I didn't get a SNES Classic, but I've had the opportunity to play it, and of course now it's on NSO, and we did an episode
on the internet.
No, it's only available. No, okay, it's only available those two places. No,
well, we'll talk about that some other time. But people who are like, actually, that's illegal. I don't like people like that. But anyway, excuse me. Star Fox. We did an episode on Star Fox and Star Fox 2. And I actually hadn't played much of... I played a little bit of the original Star Fox before, but because we were doing an episode on it, I really dedicated, a lot of time. I played many runs of it and found myself just on that game alone getting really into it. And Star Fox 2, it didn't like challenge me quite as much as Star Fox 1, I thought, but I really just got into... like, I guess the world of it. Like, I just loved the sort of like map of, and like trying to manage the stuff coming at your base. And like, obviously like all, like I pretty much played as like one character, but having all those different characters and just like walking around with your like little walker thing and like in 3D was just like really awesome, like really impressive, and I loved almost like I would love to play more of that. Then I think like I don't think there's really, I haven't played all the Star Fox games, but I don't think any of them that I've played have really scratched that same type of itch that I guess I've only recently developed of like having like a world that you like like I think of like Star Fox 64. There's like 3D parts and there's like your tank parts, but it's kind of like on the rail section.
Rail shooter primarily. Still.
The closest you're gonna get is Star Fox Assault for GameCube. I think that's really about it. Yeah.
I have not played that, so I'm kind of even Star Fox. I'm pretty limited in what I've played. I know, what's the one on DS? Didn't that have sort of like a
Command?
That had sort of like a map management thing. Like I think I might want to try that one out. But
there's a lot of games that have elements of Star Fox 2. Like the Command probably has the most. And Assault has like the different, like you can get on foot, you can get back in your R-Wing, you can like, there's like a few different things you can do. So yeah, maybe that's between the two of those, maybe that's what you're looking for.
They're different.
And I felt,
sure, yeah.
I felt like what really clicked with me about the original Star Fox was like realizing like, oh, it's more, and Star Fox 64 was like, oh, it's really like between an arcade game and a console. Like it's meant to do, like you do runs through it essentially. And Star Fox 2 I felt walked that line really well too, where like it's a relatively short trip through the game, but like I love how there will be like kind of interesting like story moments. Like you get to a certain point and they're like, oh, now we're gonna send this dude after you, and he comes out of the thing and he comes for you on the map, and it just, I don't know, it was really cool, like dynamic sort of storytelling.
Heavy,
yeah, and some of the one-on-one encounters with certain bosses weren't like all that crazy, I guess, but when you got into like certain like dog fights and stuff against characters, it was, I don't know, it's pretty cool. So yeah, Star Fox 2 would be my pick.
Was not expecting to hear that today. That's great. Actually, I didn't even think about Star Fox 2. Yeah.
Oh yes, okay.
So
that's gonna be my only one.
You're not as basic of a bitch as you thought you were.
Well, just you wait. My other two are pretty.
All right.
I
don't know. My top one is pretty basic, actually. So we'll see when we get there.
You got to have some in there, of course.
Yeah.
Brian, what's your number 2?
I guarantee I'm going to be the most basic vanilla person by the end of this show. I'm just like declaring victory right now. All three of mine are in like 90% of everyone's top 5 list. It's okay.
That's fine though. I love those are games. Those are in everyone's top 5 for a reason, So
I'm here to counterbalance you all bringing slightly more obscure things in, it's a good balance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so funny to be self-conscious about like picking some of the greatest games ever made.
Right.
It's all right. They're good for a reason. All right. Maybe you all can try to guess what the game is for my intro here. So this is something that was started on the NES, and then it made its way to the Game Boy, and then the third game made its way to the SNES. Anyone? I think you all already got it. Whatever. Anyway, we're talking about Super Metroid here. Super Samus, the return of Super Metroid.
Yeah,
that's my 2 as well. So there we go.
Yeah, so I mean, my first point is that upgrade from the NES to the SNES. I'm just not even going to talk about the Game Boy one right now. It was a massive upgrade, right? No hate on the Game Boy one. I'm just not here to talk about it. But like my neighbor and I, we would play the NES one. You die or you type in your password, you got to build all your health back up again. It's tedious. You don't really know where you're going. You got to help each other. But that was kind of part of the fun, and it was okay. It was acceptable at the time. In comes the SNES version, Samus. You're like, oh, this is what she looks like, right? Like, this is so cool. This is like bringing the concept art to life. The design is incredible. The environment, everything is just like brought up to 11 at this point. And I was replaying the beginning yesterday when I was thinking about my games, and I just wrote this quick little thing. I'll just read it. So, do you remember the first time you started Super Metroid and the intro kicked in? There's the epic music overlaid with the sound and visual of typing text. The imagery is that of a resolute Samus staring at us head on with intercuts of upgraded graphics depicting what we had experienced in the first 2 Metroid games. You're then immediately thrown into an action sequence with a fire-breathing Ridley who clutches an encased Metroid. What's striking about this opening is that the battle ends in a stalemate as Ridley escapes and the self-destruct sequence kicks in. Developers even show off a little here by making the environment tilt on its axis while lights flash and steam vents burn our hero. Just in time, Samus boards her ship and escapes. It's exactly the type of action-packed intro you'd expect from a movie of the era. It's playable cinema. And of course, an intro doesn't make a game, but wow, does it like really set the stage for something big? And when I think about that leap from the 8 to 16-bit era, like this is a massive leap forward, right? And this is all that's happening in just like 8 minutes or something, right? And then contrast that with everything that happens in the end half of the game and like how cinematic that is, which is again very cinematic, right? You have your first act and your third act, and then you have all the meat in the middle, which is the game you're actually playing through in the exploration. The music, I love the music. I'm just a sucker for like sci-fi 80s synth kind of sounding stuff today.
I believe we all are.
Yeah.
Everyone's nodding, right? Yeah, each song fits its space perfectly. And it's like it could fit into an 80s sci-fi movie or even a modern one, since that 80s synth stuff is kind of coming back or never wants to go away. I'm always going to talk about the maps in all three of my games. I love the maps. I love like the pink and kind of contrast and the grid, the way you unlock areas, the way it marks things. Again, massive upgrade from the original. And the map, of course, is coupled with the exploration, the discovery elements of this game, stuff you can ignore, some stuff you have to do. You always feel rewarded. The abilities in this game, you had pretty much everything from the original, but then there's three that really stood out to me. You got that speed booster, you could run, blast through walls, and then even shoot up vertically and do all this crazy stuff. You're like, oh, there's layers and layers and layers on this ability.
Shine sparking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The spring ball, you got grapple beams. Like, it just feels like she is so upgraded in this version. And I mentioned already, like, there's that final battle. It's not just like a big moment, it's also very unexpected. Again, the cinematic quality comes in. I mean, spoiler alert for an incredibly old game. The Metroid saves you, it transforms you, you become an unstoppable weapon. It's so cool. It's like you're like, wait, did I lose? No, you didn't lose. Like, a sacrifice has been made. You're going through this moment. You're gonna have mixed feelings about all that. And then my personal story is, back in the day when I first played this, I had just finished it, took my time, kind of soaked it all in, tried to do as close to 100% or whatever I did at the time. Then I went to a neighbor's house a few days later, and they're like, oh, we heard about this under 3 hour thing. Like, you get to see a different ending. And it's like, challenge accepted. This is the only time I think I've ever speedrun a game ever, to be totally honest. And they sat and just watched me. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, do you want to take turns? They're like, nope, you just beat it. You can do it. So it was fresh in my memory. There was maybe a couple times they were like, oh, hey, like, don't forget, you're going to have to go here next or whatever. And like, did it under 3 hours, which is actually very doable. But as a kid, it felt like such a massive accomplishment. And it's not so much of like, ooh, cool, a picture, an animation, but it's like the sense of accomplishment is really the reward for doing that.
Yeah.
It's an awesome game. I haven't revisited it in all these years. I know some people complain like about, oh, the controls are hard, like aiming and bouncing off walls, whatever. I don't think I'd feel that way if I revisited it. I think people are just trying to compare too much to modern games, and that's not the right way to look at it.
I completed it for the first time, I think it was last year, and it was extremely playable. All the things people said about like wall jumping, or like there's like, oh, I didn't know you could run or stuff. I was like, what are you talking? Like, there's like that one room where like you have to run. They're like, they don't ever show you can run in the game.
Doing
I'm like,
it right there next to you. Adam.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I did when I started up the game? I went to controls to see what the controls were. Like, I don't know. Like, there's 4 buttons. Like, what do you... I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
There's also the 3 creatures that sing the Metroid jingle and start wall jumping, right? So it's like there's... I mean, like, I don't know. What do you want?
Get out of that room, too, Like,
yeah. You can't get out unless you do it, right?
Yeah,
Brian, I'm glad you said the thing about the cinematic quality of it, because that's something I always try to stress about Super Metroid, is that if you grew up with Metroid, if you're old enough like me who have played all of them as they came out, getting to Super Metroid like that, not just the 8 to 16-bit, I mean, that blew me. Oh my God, when you see like hollowed out Brinstar, like the old air, I was like, oh my.
Oh yeah, and then the little like beam turns on. You're like, is that a camera? Is it tracking me? Is it going to attack me? Like,
blew me away.
It's so eerie.
Absolutely blew me away. And then you get to the end. Obviously, you save the baby Metroid, Metroid 2, and that comes back to you in that form at Super Metroid. I'm telling you, if you were lucky enough to have played all those games like in order as they came out, Oh baby.
Not
You
as
know,
they came
yeah,
out,
it
but I did
means
play those
it's
first two as
even
a kid and loved them.
yeah, so like but even if you didn't, that's still cool in Super Metroid. You don't need that, but if you have, oh my god, it's the absolute best. That's why it's one of my favorite moments of all time, for sure.
Yeah.
And that ending really set the stage for a lot of like future Metroid games, right? This idea of like Samus and the Metroid, kind of coming together, like the morphing of the transformation.
Literally,
that opens up so much story, and it's like it's really interesting.
Mhm.
Sorry, I was thinking about a buddy cop series of Samus and the Metroid solving mysteries and going on adventures.
Metroid with a little cop hat, like the old like mid-century cop hat right on
just-
top. Yeah.
Yeah, the Metroid would have to be the comic relief, and Samus would have to be the straight man. It would have to be like that would
sure.
be the dynamic, right? Like she's super serious, and Metroid's like sticking its tongue out the window. Is that
Tendrils?
Yeah.
I'm into it.
It's a real Sam and Max situation
Mhm.
for sure. But
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I was one of those kids who learned who Samus was from Super Smash Brothers, but
Shame.
I have since okay, but yeah,
No shame.
I mean, hey,
Little shame.
I didn't know what I didn't know what a Metroid was in whatever the late 90s.
did
but-
you
Metroid is
think
the
her
guy that
name
can't
was
crawl.
Metroid like I did because I was 6 years old? Did you think her name was Metroid?
Well, I luckily, Smash. She picked.
Oh,
it's
Smash!
like
it says her name. Duh, of
They go,
course. duh.
Samus. And
It
I'm
says
like,
right
okay.
there, idiot. Zelda's the
Oh,
guy with
duh.
the green hat.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
But-
I thought that was Linkle.
If only.
But no, this was my number 2 pick, having played it recently, because like this, I mean, I'm a massive Zelda fan, and like the way you explore and like unlock the world and the Metroid games is like, it's similar to like a Zelda style game, and so it's like way my shit. It's way up my alley, and this one, Super Metroid, by far, I think has the best atmosphere for me out of all the Metroid games. Yeah, like I think the most recent one I played was really fun, but it like, I don't know, there's something, I'm not nostalgic for Super Metroid or anything, but I think it has like the best vibes out of any of the Metroid games.
I can see that. Man, that's a good question. See, I always go to Fusion. Fusion is always largely my favorite. Maybe Prime 2. Maybe one of those. But like, yeah, Super Metroid is obviously like super duper up there. Dread is no slouch either. Man,
I love that
it's
game,
tough.
but
Yeah, I like Dread a lot. I'm also
Yeah.
just
And-
big Prime 2 fan over here.
I love Prime 2.
It's so good, dude. But yeah.
Kevin on Fine Time hates Prime 2, and we go back and forth on it so much. I
Dude,
can't wait
yeah,
until
I know.
Prime 2 remastered happens and I can shove it in its fucking.
that's
Yeah, one day. Isn't there supposed to be a new Prime game coming out any day now? Just kidding.
It's
We'll announce it one of
Maybe.
these days.
Yep.
Although I think it's really coming this year. I really
They
believe so.
they
That
think I think
is
they
the
mean
confirmer.
2025 when they said
Mhm.
it. I think it's definitely happening. So yeah.
Yeah,
you talked about that cinematic quality of like the big intro, and then it has like an epic conclusion, and then I like the middle part of that game, like it like that tone it sets in the beginning, I think does a lot of work throughout the rest of it, because you're isolated, you're by yourself. It's a little spooky.
and said before,
And,
but that is a Nintendo first-party start screen on a 16-bit console with dead bodies on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like
There is.
Right. So it carries a lot of weight through the experience of the game.
yeah,
Definitely.
I know it's like one of the most praised games of all time, and it's like there's basically nothing that hasn't been said about it, and it's really gauche or whatever. But I can't be too cool for Super Metroid. I can't.
Nobody
it's
can.
too good.
Yeah. That's what I did.
I know a
I'm
lot
sorry
of people
to
that would love to claim that they are, but I didn't actually finish it for the first time until whenever the Analog Super NT came out is when I played through that and Link to the Past, like to the end finally, with both of those, and loved them. But yeah, dude, Super Metroid is just it's unassailable. I don't know, man. It's there's so much about it that's just swinging so much harder and hitting so much farther than so many of its contemporaries, and so many of its antecedents, and everything that's like been inspired by it for the most part has failed to kind of live up to a lot of the things about it that I think make it so special. even taken outside of its context of time and place that it was released in, and all development stories and stuff like that. But even among all the other giant heavy hitters of '94, it's still huge. It's still one of those things. Like anytime if someone told me they think that it is either their single favorite or the single best game of all time, I'm not gonna argue with that. It's on that short list of yeah, that's valid. That's a valid pick, 100%. The only other weird note I wanted to bring in earlier when you were talking about the end bit, but that hyper beam or whatever that you just vaporize Mother Brain with feels like it's going to set the Super Nintendo on fire. The way that the colors are flashing through the screen reminds me of the glitch weapons in Axiom Verge that actually break the they're effects to make it look like they're breaking the video game as you shoot stuff with it, the environment's turning into broken code and stuff like that. That's what it feels like that thing is doing, but for real, as opposed to an aesthetic. It feels like it's burning a hole through I don't know, the concept of video games in general. It's wild. There's so much just amazing stuff in that game, and it's it really is in a class unto its own in terms of just atmosphere and vibe and spectacle. And because the first and last 5% are these really bombastic and very, very cinematic sequences, but then like you said, they bookend that middle 90% that's almost entirely quiet exploration, and it is it's not as quiet and lonesome as the first two games, but there's a lot more there. You're on a planet that feels alive as opposed to exploring a dark, cold, dead rock floating out in the void. But
I don't know, man. Creed being 3 screens tall made me
Creed being freakishly horrifyingly large was
made me. I was like, yo, that was just fucking
again.
crazy.
Talk about upgrades, right? Because in the NES, they're different, they're unique, but they're still just these two little things that are about your size, and there's nothing really interesting about that. And you can almost get this impression the developers probably wanted to create something big back then if they could have. Right. And so it all comes to life at this point. He can't even fit on the screen entirely. He's kind of obscured by the background under him. And then one more random little point. I also love that this game has not one but two self-destruct sequences, because I mean, why not two?
They're great. Self-destruct sequences are excellent, unless you're Devil May Cry 2. Pretty much every game pulls it off great.
It's like why Tokyo Drift has multiple training montages.
Yeah.
One's good.
Yeah.
Two's better.
Same thing. Well, it's not training, but I was gonna say Rocky 4 has 4 montages in it. I think
this is a fourth movie.
A lot of montage in those 4 of them. 3, 4, 5 Rocky movies.
You got to make it bigger every time. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was also my 2. Andre, what's your number 2?
It is time to talk about the one and only Hyperzone.
Yes.
So, Christmas 91. I get this game for Christmas. Now, my mom she actually got me the Super Nintendo when it came out, before school, because it came out August 91 here. So, I got it kind of basically before school started as an incentive. Your ass better not be a shithead at school. I don't want the principal calling me or anybody else. That maybe happened a couple times anyway. I got the Super Nintendo taken away from me, right? I mean, who knows, right? There's really no way to know. It was 1991. We didn't document a single thing back then, right?
No, there was no history or concept of such thing.
But yeah, basically, I had Super Mario World to play for 4 months. I found all 96 exits, play that game inside and out. I was itching for a new game. So Christmas 91, I got 2 games. I got Ultraman, which was a fighting game. It was I loved Ultraman at the time, so that's why she got me it. It wasn't a very good game, but at least you got to zap kaiju and they exploded or whatever. And Ultraman did do the mode 7 grew really big, so that was cool. But it wasn't a very good game. The second game I got was Hyperzone. And I got to tell you, I don't think I ever would have heard of this game in my life if my mom just didn't get me this for Christmas. It is the most randomly obscure, early Super Nintendo game. I don't know why. It's made by HAL Laboratory.
Oh. I'm trying to figure out what it is. I don't even think I know this game.
I only do because of that episode of Fine Time that Jerry was talking about earlier that I was on, where he showed me some music from it. I was like, oh, I need to get a copy of this. And then I did, and it's great. That's my story.
Yeah. It's thank you.
Okay.
Moving right along. No, it's basically a Mode 7 rail shooter. And as I said, the only
Ooh.
game I had was Mario World and these two. So I hadn't played F-Zero at that point. So Hyperzone was my Mode 7 moment. You know, that's what actually I was like, whoa. And that's what kind of put my that was like my standard going forward. You know, again, some people might be F-Zero or Super Mario Kart even. For me, it's Hyperzone, just because that was the first thing I saw. And as I said, it's a Mode 7 rail shooter, but it's weird that it has so many things from F-Zero. It's like, it's a rail shooter.
It kind of looks like it in some ways.
Yeah, you can't move wherever on the screen wherever you want, like you can in like Star Fox or a Panzer Dragoon. You're almost like on a path. It's like you're almost racing. You have to be on this path, and if you go off the path, you're going to be taking major damage. So it's kind of like F-Zero, where you might run into walls or something like that. So it's weird that like two developers had like kind of the same idea, but like two different genres. Like one's a racing game and one's a rail shooter. It's bizarre. It's a pretty easy game. But that, you know, honestly, I think that's kind of what rail shooters should be. They shouldn't be super hard. Like Star Fox has some bite to it, right? But to me, it's almost like a theme park, right? You're on this ride, you're going forward, you're seeing this stuff, you're hearing this music, you're having this experience. Yeah, you want to shoot stuff along the way, right? But I don't know. When I think about like Panzer Dragoon, I think of the visuals, I think of moments, and I don't necessarily think about the way I shot stuff. Or like, oh man, that boss is really hard. I think about how fucking cool it was. That's what Hyperzone does, right? That's really what it's about, and they nail that. As I said, this game is developed by HAL Laboratory, which means that the music was done by one Mr. Jun Ishikawa, who now is known for Kirby music, of course. But back then, he was just a dude working at HAL Laboratory, and he just did whatever assignments came to him, and this is one of them. Oh man, and as Andrew said, I had him on Fine Time about a year ago where we talked about our favorite music moments, and I picked one from Hyperzone back then because the penultimate stage, the bioplant, it's this weird pulsing level, and it's like strobing almost, not like super fast. It's like the Polka Shock type, right? But it's like, it's really like, it's just strobing on and off, and these eyeballs start coming at you, and you start going really fast, and this crazy like techno industrial music plays. It's like, bro, what the fuck? The rest of the game was not like this up to this point, you know? So it just really shocks you. Which is to say, the 8 stages in Hyperzone are very different from each other. You have your lava level, you have your like, there's this cool place called Ripplefield. It almost looks like in 80s and 90s anime where it's like it's the year 24XX and they live on a dome in the moon, and here is this dome utopia with like green stuff and all this white utopia. That's kind of what that stage looks like you're inside of one of those, or at least that's what my kid imagination and still my 42-year-old imagination still does with that stage, right? Because it's Mode 7. You can only, it's like Andrew said about Shutoko Battle, you know, it's kind of bisected. The stage is mirrored, the top and bottom, but then in the middle you have like kind of the strip of like, here is like some background, and that's kind of what you get from it. Anyway, yeah, Hyperzone, quick little 30-minute rail shooter. You will have a ball. You will love every song. You will love every sound effect. It is an incredible looking game, and HAL Laboratory, when they did weird shit on Super Nintendo, they always hit. So it is, to me, this is the essence of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, this game. Like, it may not be my favorite one, but when I was like, this is the Super Nintendo, it's Hyperzone for me.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's there's a little bit of Space Harrier in there. I think with some of the like, you know, a lot of the enemies, like the boss fights, are a series of circular sprites that are connected to each other, like that big dragon thing, that are kind of floating around in similar patterns in and out of the background as they're kind of scaling forward and back, leaning on all kinds of scaling and rotation stuff for Mode 7 here. It's not just the background part, but there's a little bit of like those parts of Panorama Cotton on Mega Drive. There are some, if I can parody myself for a little bit, there are a couple like anti-gravity racing games that use a similar concept, like Gauge, whatever, on N64 does this, as well as Japan only Hirschvolger on PS2. It's I don't know, it's an old is it a Nordic word? I don't remember. It's HS or H RSVELGR, I think. Anyway, it's
Oh, I know what you're talking. Okay, I've never actually tried to say that out loud, so I never.
the game
like
itself is.
Yeah,
I was trying to say
picks right there.
phonetically because I thought that would be funny. But yeah, it was just another game that I thought of the first time I looked at Hyperzone and was looking at the way that it's kind of laid out. And that's probably not a helpful point of comparison for anyone at home. But anyway, I don't know,
it has echoes.
Yeah, the behind the back rail shooters where you don't have a reticle that you're focusing on and it's just your character that you're pointing, as is the case with stuff like Space Harrier and Panorama Cotton. I think it's very difficult to do that well, but the reason that I think Hyperzone works is because it just aims a set degree kind of like up on the screen from where your ship sprite is, I guess, if that makes sense. And it becomes very intuitive to aim at things, and it becomes less about hitting your marks and more about just I don't want to say navigating the space because that sounds so corny, but like it's just managing it is, but it's managing your like geographic placement on the screen in like X and Y axes as you traverse the Z axis, if that makes any sense. I don't know. It's a cool video game.
It's so good. I cannot believe it's so obscure for an early Super Nintendo game, the first game of its kind on the system. I don't know how this game, nobody knows about it. It's wild, but you know, that's just the way it goes sometimes, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange, but as a big fan of shooters of all kinds from this era, I like this game a lot, and I'm grateful that you showed it to me.
I'm really glad I can introduce it to you. I try to tell as many people about a Hyperzone as I possibly can.
It's you've talked it way high on my list of like need to play games. It's leapfrogged all the other games you've mentioned. And stuff.
Dude,
it's snackable too. Like it's a really easy,
exactly,
literally half an hour. Like just like you were talking about Star Fox 2. That's rail shooter short. You know, so go for it.
Like it's not.
It's very easy.
It's not going to try to kill you. Like if you want to, you can either, like Dre said, enjoy the spectacle and the wild tech demo nature of it, or start score chasing or whatever. Like there are layers of, I think, ways that you can kind of choose your own investment and level of interaction with that game. But it does seem like it was meant to sell consoles.
I was literally like 9 years old, so I couldn't have beat. I mean, like, yeah, I played like stuff like Space Harrier and stuff at the arcade, but I could never. I mean, like, I'm dead in 30 seconds. I had a ball, but like, I'm dead, right? This is a game I could actually play at the time and beat, which was really appreciated, you know?
I think that like that length is like exactly what I want out of those type of games. So yeah.
A sin and punishment type of thing where you just sit down and do a run.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, Andrew, what do you got? What are you cooking?
Sure. Yeah. The next one that I wanted to bring up is an old favorite that was discovered through many old Giant Bomb live streams, but I wanted to talk about the old standby Sanrio World Smash Ball for the Super Famicom.
What?
I've never heard of that.
Sanrio, but
I feel bad. This was my like. I think other people might have picked this kind of thing. Okay. Basically, it's a Windjammers. They made a Windjammer.
Oh hell yeah!
But it's largely vertical and it's very silly. You are using like little like kind of batons and stuff to whack a spinning disc back and forth, trying to break through different barriers of blocks or bounce it around obstacles and stuff like that to make the disc into the goal on your enemy's side of the field there. It's a very, it's Pong, it's Breakout, it's a lot of 70s arcade games thrown into a blender, but done in a way that is really creative and silly and not worried about balance or anything like that. I was kind of between this and Tetris Battle Gaiden, but at the end of the day, I think I like Sanrio World Smash Ball more. It's really kinetic. It's very fun. It's very satisfying.
This is really cute.
The sound effects are adorable and great. All the music is really good. The pixel art's fantastic. There's like underwater levels where they have this kind of layer of warbling back and forth. I don't even know what you would call it. They're faking water caustics on the Super Nintendo with color math. It's really cool.
That sounds rad, actually.
it's wild, but like there's like what you call it, like pinball bumpers and stuff to bounce the disc off of and all that. I don't know. It is a very fun, just multiplayer, sports-esque game.
I'm looking at footage right now. It almost like if like Kirby's Block Ball was like a versus game, maybe is like a good way to say it. Yeah, this looks like something I would play the shit out of if obviously it's something like
stages and characters and stuff like that, and they're all wildly different, and some are exponentially more or less fair feeling than others. It's great.
What would they have called this here? Hello.
Modes? Is there like a single player like campaign and like a versus battle thing? Is there, like,
totally. Yeah, I mean it is definitely a great, like, if you have a buddy over and you don't know what else to do kind of game to just put on and kill a few hours, because you can just go forever. Because it also just feels really good in the hands. Like, it is just a well-made video game. So I think it's hard to put down once you get going. Yeah, it's super polished. It was mid '93, I think. It has had a like fan translation if you want to find a ROM now for English, but I mean, I've just played with a Japanese cart forever, and it's never been a problem. It's not exactly a text heavy game. You're not playing Bahamut Lagoon or anything here. But yeah, no, it's just a really, really fun, solid standby that's just always been here and has been one of my favorite Super Nintendo games.
This does look cool. What would they have called this here? Like Hello Kitty's Badass Rumble or something? Or
probably, yeah. Yeah. Hello Kitty's Kekabanto.
Yeah.
Would have had a commercial with like, my go-to is always Machine Head by Bush. That Yoshi's Island advertisement that had it.
So funny.
Oh my god! 90s commercials
play it loud,
out
baby.
of control.
Play it loud.
How did we even survive? I don't even know how I'm still alive.
Arguably, we didn't. Yeah, I know people have been talking about. There's a Hello Kitty Island adventure game that I guess just came out, which I only found out about because they put big challenges in there. They brought my homie out of the box he's been in since the '70s, and they gave him a really weird 3D model that's incredibly cursed if you look at it straight on.
You're not supposed to look at big challenges straight on.
No, never look at big challenges straight on.
No, wait, that's a name of a character?
Oh, sorry. Yes,
Challenges?
there was a weird. There was a Sanrio character that's just like a happy little alligator named Big Challenges, and they never did anything with him. It's just one really cool little drawing, and it like over the years has become like I don't even. Is memed even the right word anymore? Anyway, whatever. The kids out there, they love them some big challenges.
You could easily say Vector the Crocodile's based off of big challenges.
Sure. What? Any Croc? Yoshi?
Yeah, Croc. Big challenges.
Yes. But yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, I worked with Sanrio in 2015, late 2015, at a museum here in Seattle. We were doing a big exhibit for Sanrio stuff, and that was one of the most precise and demanding series of brand guidelines I've ever had to work with. That is maybe the most like strict and hardcore about their very hard and fast rules about brand guideline stuff of like maybe any company that I've ever worked with. So anytime I see a video game with all of their stuff all over it that's just extremely silly and goofy and violating that stuff all over the place, I get a weird perverse sense of joy from it. Like working with them was not a bad experience. It was a pretty good experience. So I had a lot of fun. It was just very intense.
Yeah, I would imagine for something that storied and old. Yeah.
Yeah, they were very, very particular about the way that Kitty is and is not portrayed.
Did you get to draw big challenges?
No, absolutely not. They would have killed me to death.
Even to this day, he can't do it.
Yeah, he cannot. Yeah.
I had to sign a very specific NDA that says I will never, ever draw a cartoon crocodile and write big challenges above him.
Yep.
Oh, that's a sweet pick. Yeah, it looks awesome. So, Brian, we had the same number 2. We might even have the same number 1.
I hope you guys do. I hope you guys do.
Probably.
It's
I hope
highly
so.
like, what's your number one game?
Well, I might surprise you here because this one is pretty obscure. It's a little game called The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
All right,
Um,
yeah.
I knew you guys would.
if you guys haven't heard of this, it's starring a princess named Link. Just kidding. Okay, let's get into it. So, like I said with Super Metroid, a lot of my nostalgia and like joy for these games is about like what it was like to play them back then, but also what it was like to transition from their predecessors. And that's true with this one as well, right? We went from Zelda 1 and 2 to this. We had our top-down view has been restored after a slight detour in Zelda 2, where it's sort of used, sort of not, right? No,
Mhm.
first of all, like let me pause for a second. Zelda 2 is a great game. I am in the camp of I
Yeah.
like Zelda 2.
100%.
I played it all through in college, and I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and just play it all through. I don't think it's as hard as people say. I think people need to let that go a little bit. A
Yep.
short sword is actually cool. Attacking low and high is actually really interesting as a mechanic.
Mhm.
All right, I'm gonna get off my high horse, come back to
You're
Zelda 3 now.
100% correct. You're cooking right now.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You're not
Alright.
going to get any pushback from this panel, I don't think.
All right, good. Everyone listening, feel however you want to feel. It's okay to love or hate a game. But yeah, so this is obviously a massive leap forward in technology from the NES, and it showed like what a Zelda game can really be. Like this is another one of those like Super Metroid where it's like I could feel the developers wanted to do more on the 8-bit, and now they can because you see the concept art, you see like what they really want to do, right? And now you get to kind of see it come more to life. So the graphical upgrades, there's all that orchestral music, including like revamped versions of things we've heard before. The mechanics are obviously much more complex. Dungeons now have a little bit of vertical depth to them, right? So we're kind of not just moving left, right, up, down on a screen horizontally, we're moving vertically now. And this is also a game now where there is a simple yet meaningful story. Like it's been documented well that the NES game, especially the original, like was never meant to have a story like that the developers wanted it to be, something more about the game itself than the story. There are plots in this game. Again, like plots and stories are two different things, right? It's like bad guy wants to rule the world, good guy has to save the princess, stop the bad guy, right? That's the plot, but there's not really much story in the NES games. And then here we come into the SNES, and now there is a little bit more story, and it's just enough where I think it like elevates the game without like taking it too far down any kind of direction. Like you get to fill in the blanks still, the way everything kind of progresses throughout the game, and like, oh, like who's this guy that Link's living with? What does he mean to him? What's his past? Oh, a little hint here, right? Oh, he has a weapon. That's
Mhm.
interesting. Was he a knight? Like these little things kind of add to the story and kind of open up the world a little more. Um, it is the cliche hero's journey. The stakes are getting higher as you progress, the hero's getting new powers and insights, but it's also a cliche that's done incredibly well. I'm perfectly fine with cliches is when they're done well. Like you're Link, you're the hero. By the time you finally face off against Ganon, you've changed, you're battle worn, you're confident, and then it feels meaningful when you finally enter that room beyond Ganon and you see the Triforce. It's a big moment. Again, promised I would talk about maps with all three of these. This map is
Oh, boy.
iconic, if not the most iconic Super Nintendo
Maybe the
map,
yeah.
Yeah,
or
it
any
is.
map, right?
It is.
The thing that like I was looking at it the other day, and also looking back on the interview that's in the SNES maps book, and we were talking a little bit about the maps in there, and like what was striking to me is that this map, it conveys a sense of massive scale. It gives this impression of something way larger than it really is. And if you can pull that off in a game, because games have constraints, they have limitations, constraints create innovation, and they found a way to make it so there's this cohesive flow between the area, but they make it seem so much bigger than it really is. And then obviously, having dual worlds makes it feel that much bigger. And it's not just the fact that there's A and B, light and dark. There's also the way there's a dynamic element between those two. Should I jump between the two? Can I solve a puzzle because of that? And again, the world feels bigger and bigger because of this connectivity. Speaking as a quick tangent, like, people who haven't played the old Zelda games, like you're probably familiar with, like, there's always some element of duality in a Zelda game, or often there is, right? Like the first game had a first and second quest, right? You have light and dark worlds, you have the past and the future with Ocarina, right? Like this one really is the one that kicked like the whole duality thing into high gear and like set that foundation.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll just mention, it's kind of an aside here, is there's no dull moments in this game. It has a really good flow to it. Like you're crisscrossing throughout the world, you're revisiting some areas, but it never feels tedious or boring. You're consistently gaining new abilities, which kind of open things up. You're revisiting areas. You're like, I remember seeing that. I can swim there now. I can break that. I can climb that, right? And then you feel rewarded, and it's the right cadence of those rewards, which I think is incredibly difficult to do as a designer. And as soon as you're starting to get a little bored of all that, you can blow your little flute and get whisked away and move on somewhere else, right? So like it's the right design choice, I think, in how they put that all together. There's a lot more to say about this. Everyone's already said it. I'm sure you all have feelings as well, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, could probably talk for hours about this game for sure. It's for me, it's like one of the first games I've ever seen. My grandfather was really into Zelda, like the early games, and he had an NES and a Super Nintendo. So that was one of the only times I ever saw a Super Nintendo, was when I was like 4 or something, and I would play it a little bit. But at that time in my life, it was basically a game you'd start up and be like, you could start from Link's house or the Sanctuary, and I'd just be like, I'm gonna start at my house, and I'd walk around and go to the little fairy fountain there and fight some guys and die, and that was about it, But it was just like, it's just like a cool like fantasy world that I like hang out in. I don't think I really understood the concept of like beating a game yet, but
it's great that Zelda can work on that level, though.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like a kid can
even
just
the original
like do that.
can.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. I definitely did do that with the original. So yeah,
same.
But
now, I'm a massive Zelda fan. Like I've talked about that a ton, obviously. So don't need to get into that necessarily now. But this was one where when I really started to get into the series more, I played it when I was like a teenager. On like an emulator, going back to it, and it was like awesome. And then it's one that, unlike some of the other ones in the series, this is one, and the original, where it's like every time I play it, I like it more. Whereas like there's other games in the series where it's like it has diminishing returns. Like the thought of playing some of them again is like, I don't want to do that, But this one I'm always happy to. I always discover something new. And I don't know, I always just like, there's a certain mystique to the game that the later games kind of lose as like the series develops a bit more of like its identity as it goes on. Like the way they talk about like the Triforce in this game, it's so much more obscured. They talk about the golden lands and the sacred golden power. Even from the first game, it's less of like, ooh, this is a little collectible you get, it's like, you go to this weird world and people turn into monsters and you turn into a bunny and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas like, as it's gone on, like by the time you're in Wind Waker, it's like you're collecting like,
dumped.
Yeah, you're getting a little, like the Triforce is now like a collectible that you're getting in the game, So yeah, that's something I always like really appreciate about I actually think the fact that it's like not a ton of story actually enhances like the atmosphere compared to a game. Yeah, and the world being so, it's like, it's a relatively like, you can play it relatively non-linearly. Like they number the Dark World dungeons for you and everything, but you can kind of explore the world and uncover it however you want. One of the required items to beat like the Turtle Rock boss is the ice rod, which you just find in a cave in the light world, like near Lake Hylia, so it has the sense of like, Zelda would not do that now, like, no. It's like you go to a region, you solve all the little puzzles they got, you get the item, you do a bunch of puzzles with that, and then use that item on the boss. And I get why maybe they wouldn't just dump one in a random cave now, but to me, it just adds to the game. And yeah, it's like the gold standard.
On that note about story, like, I had been reading a lot of like Zelda stuff to my son. He doesn't even know it's a video game yet, which is kind of cute. He just
That's
knows
so
them as it's like
awesome.
knows them from like these like I just read him the Ocarina of Time manga. It's like a 2 volume manga, and like we've read the there's that Ishinomori's Link to the Past book that was in Nintendo Power and then became its own standalone book.
that's right,
The
yeah.
art is so beautiful, and like it's one of those things where like because it's a book, just like the Ocarina one, like there's all this supplemental material. You know, the author gets to take a little of like a dance and like put in little extra things here and make up a little other things there, and like it's so fun. It just like makes me love the game more, like knowing there's this material that like kind of is adjacent to it, and it's still out there for like you don't need to overpay for it. You can actually pick up clean new copies for the sticker price. So if people want to get it, they really should check it out.
Your son will be disappointed when in Ocarina of Time, Link does not befriend a baby Volvagia and have to decapitate it. I guess maybe that's better, actually.
Probably,
That was a really
for the
weird
best.
choice.
Link raising dogs in the SS? What are you talking? All right. Anyway,
Oh, no.
dude, I think without looking it up, I think. Oh, dude, I was just gonna talk about Zelda. What you got, Dre?
No. Go ahead.
All right. I think this is the last one to release before I was born.
91,
Mm.
right?
Is this game right? Yeah, because it was.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
93. So I think it's around
Oh my god.
then.
I was 1 year old when this came out.
Nice.
Oh,
Dre's dying, just
turning to dust inside right now. Yeah.
That's fine.
Like I said, we'll
Yeah,
see you
same
in
here.
your
It's us
retirement.
later.
I was born in '81, so you all are
Okay. See. See. We're in the same age group. These two youngins here. I tell you what. But yeah, no. Just like I was saying to Brian about Chrono Trigger, I have never played Link to the Past since it came out again. Like I played it back in the day. I beat it like 5 times or something like that in the summer of '92. Never played it again. Like that is a game I really need to go back and like. I bet, and it's like I said about Chrono Trigger. I bet it's just as good or as better than I remember it. Honestly, there's no way that game doesn't exactly hold exactly what it did before for me.
It's such a weird.
I think
relationship
it definitely
with the
holds
game.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it whips hard.
But like it's strange because like I said earlier about Super Metroid is I didn't actually finish this game, like play all the way through it until the Analog Super NT came out. And I kind of used that as an excuse to play through a bunch of it was like those two and like Final Fantasy VI and a few other things because I was like, okay, I can take the cartridge back and forth between like a real Super Nintendo on a CRT to the Super NT out in the living room or whatever, and there was a novelty to that I enjoyed. So I played through a bunch of Super Nintendo games that I'd been meaning to for like my entire life that way. Because I also kind of missed the Super Nintendo having and N64 being my main like childhood console at the time, and then having access to NES and Atari 2600 and stuff. I just like there was a gap in the middle of like I would have access to random like Genesis games and stuff here and there, but like I didn't have ready access to a Super Nintendo growing up until like emulation and stuff later. And the Zelda Collector's Disc on GameCube does not have this game. It has the 2 NES games and the 2 N64 games. It doesn't have Link to the Past in it for whatever
So
reason.
weird.
It's very,
Yeah, it's
very
weird.
strange. So I just like I didn't have a like normal way to play this game, so I kind of just missed it for a long time. And I started it many, many times, but I was always like, no, I want to like make sure that I take the like set aside the time and attention that this thing deserves or whatever. And the problem with doing that with any media is it becomes very easy to keep kicking that can down the road forever, and then suddenly you're in your 30s with a bunch of like movies you should have seen already and stuff like that. Anyway, the point is I had already played Link's Awakening through as a kid on the deluxe release on Game Boy Color.
I played that, like completed that before as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I adored that game. It was weird as hell. I loved it so much.
Love it.
And so there was, and I'd messed around with like the Capcom Game Boy games and stuff like that over the years. Like coming back to Link to the Past was strange because like compared to other 2D Zeldas, it's very much it's the prototypical version of that formula, but it's shocking how well crystallized that formula is. Like it's very easy to look at it and be like, oh yeah, this is a very aesthetically comforting old Zelda game. Great, yes, okay, cool. But just a hair's breadth below that on the surface is this whole, like, if you look at it in its time of being a 1991 release, of launching with the Super Nintendo in the United States, and of being the third Zelda game, and looking at everything else around it, and having much more of that like contextual understanding that I have now that I would not have had if I was playing it as a kid. I do appreciate a lot more just how weird and how big and how much extra effort there is in this game, or how weird it is and how big it is and how much extra effort there is, because stuff like that, like the hidden, ice rod being a thing that you need, there's, for every one of those, there's like 15 other things that you don't need, but are like also incredibly cool and satisfying and fun to just like either stumble into, or you have those like Korok seed moments where you just see something odd in the environment and you're like, I bet I could probably interact with this in some way. And then you do, and the game finds a weird way to either directly reward you, or to at least like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we see you kind of thing. And the game is so much bigger than it looks like, and so much more in depth, and so just astonishingly well realized and refined. Like, it feels like the sequel to another third Zelda game that, like it feels like a sequel to itself in a weird way. Like, it doesn't feel like a follow-up.
Such a far leap forward. Like, it leaped two steps forward. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it feels like there should have been another like link in the evolutionary chain between Zelda 2 and 3.
You didn't deserve
I think
it.
That alone just makes it really. I just think it's a really, really ridiculously impressive creative work, as well as everything else. Putting aside the fact that they're working with brand new hardware and everything, like, just as a video game on its own, obviously everything is an assemblage of its influences and things that have come before. Like, that's the way that everything ever is. But there's just a really, really impressive layer of polish, and just kind of the way that all of the influences are constructed into this game, I think is really impressive. They do a much better job of hiding the Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, than a lot of the others, previous Zelda games, and other kind of young protagonist going off on a big adventure games that were popular in the Famicom and Super Famicom eras. Like, and I think part of that is because we didn't have a PC-88 or like MSX or whatever over here to look at, and like that's where a lot of that work was being done by companies like Falcom and stuff like that were doing all of that weird experimental work. Like, you don't get Link to the Past without like 5 Dragon Slayer games, whatever. Up until then, you don't get Link to the Past without getting like Legacy of the Wizard and the first few like random East games and stuff like that. Like, all of these games were in conversation with each other. We only got some of them over here. So that when you only see the jump points of the evolutionary chain, I guess it's a lot easier to be like, wow, this is a massive leap. But also, I think there's the other side of the bell curve, where if you've exposed yourself to enough of that stuff and you have enough of an understanding to start to see the ways, at least, that those puzzle pieces are put together, I don't know. For me, at least, it's only made that game more impressive over time, and with history. I don't know. It's a really cool, very comforting, really extremely well made and exciting and just fun and cool video game. I don't know. Again, it's a thing that people have sung the praises of forever, so it's difficult to try and sit here and tell you what's cool about A Link to the Past. But like,
it's a good game.
Good video
Has
game,
anyone
dude.
heard of it?
Yeah. Anyone check
I'm not
this
even
out?
gonna try. Y'all said it
Hidden
already.
gem?
I also, again, I haven't played it in 30 plus years, so I'm really, I bet, I see, that's the thing. That's why I'm excited to do it, because like when I go back to it now, I'll be like, oh yeah, that. I probably don't remember how most of the dungeons work at all. I didn't even remember the thing about, Brian, what you said about that knight or whatever at the beginning. Was that his...
Oh, his uncle,
like,
I think.
His
it is.
uncle.
Yeah, his uncle or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, see, I didn't even remember that,
Yeah,
right? So
Open
like,
on
I
a
bet
dark
there's
and
a lot of
stormy
stuff.
night, man.
It was a dark and stormy night. Snoopy
Cool
typed
intro.
on his typewriter.
We can't get into all the aspects.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's got a great intro, great dungeons. So much from the series comes from this game
Yeah.
that I've talked to you a little bit about this, Andre, where like Ocarina of Time came and like people credit things that A Link to the Past did first to Ocarina of Time now.
I can't stand that shit. Drives me insane. You already know how I feel about Ocarina of Time. I don't even like that. So like, yeah.
Well,
so
and you know I love it. So it's like it still bothers me.
Ooh, I can't stand.
Look,
that
if you
shit.
ever talk about A Link to the Past on your show, call me.
I wouldn't even think of anyone. You were my Zelda man. I am your Mario man.
Yes. Oh, that's so sweet.
we are married. What?
I do.
Okay.
Well,
McKenna perks up.
Since we're married,
do you want? She knows already.
It's fine.
Oh yeah. Hopefully she's okay. Do you want to say your number one?
Yes. And okay, it is. Brian might already know this because when I had him on, we talked about it a little bit. It is Super Ghouls and Ghosts. It is my favorite Super Nintendo game. It is one of my favorite games of all time. It is by far the best in the series. And I think that is for a number of reasons. Like there, a lot of the things I'm going to praise this game for, you could also praise other Ghouls and Ghosts and Goblins games for. But Super Ghouls and Ghosts nails it in a number of ways. So first of all, I did not know Super Ghouls and Ghosts is going to be a sequel, like its own game, because like when I first saw it, because obviously there's Ghouls and Ghosts at the arcade, that's what I fell in love with. And so when I saw Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I just thought it was the Super Nintendo version of Ghouls and Ghosts. So when I got it home, I was like, this isn't what I played. This is a totally different. I can double jump. What the motherfuck? That's what I said at 9 years old. What the motherfuck is this? Okay, that's what I said out loud. No, so it blew me away. It's like I got way more than I bargained for as a kid from this game, and I spent the entire summer of '92 just playing this game over and over and over again, trying to beat it. And I finally did. I finally triumphed. Like, it took me so long. It took me weeks of repetition. This was the first game I ever played where that was kicking my ass. Because, like, you know how it is when you're a kid and you play, well, for me, it was the NES games, right? Which are sometimes just unfairly hard. You go play it, you play a couple levels and you get too far. It's like, okay, that's as far as I can get, right? And, you know, and still as an adult, I still play, you know, I turn on something on Nintendo Switch Online. It's like, okay, that's as far as I feel like pushing this thing, right? Journey to Silius, you have defeated me. I'm not trying this anymore, right? But Super Ghouls and Ghosts is the first time I was playing something I was like, that was so hard, but so fun. Where I was like, I'm going to beat this game. I'm going to beat this game. And I did. And the reason why Super Ghouls and Ghosts is great for me is that it's a game of commitment, I think. So obviously you're committed to your weapon, right? You pick up the weapon, that's the weapon you have. That's it. If you die, you still have that weapon. If you continue, you still have that weapon. That's it. Until you game over and start the game over if you don't want that weapon anymore. So you can default back to Lance. That's it. You're going to have to pick up something else, which means that if you discover like a treasure chest, you better make sure you open that thing in a way where you don't have to pick up the thing that comes out of it, because otherwise you're picking it up. And I love that commitment of the game. You have to meet it on its terms that way, you know? And I love that you have to get the money bags for continues. Like, you have to like keep getting those, and like the game is very generous about continues, but you have to pick up those money bags. You commit to the money bags, the game commits to you, you know? And yes, of course, that is written in lore. That is written on my, you can't see it right in front of me here, but it is written in scripture. And like the double jumping, you move at one speed when you jump. You can't move back when you jump. You move at the same arc. And you can double jump again. You can jump again if you want to, and that's it. You have to commit to that jump. If there's something in front of you that you're going to land on, too bad. You're landing on it. That's it. You know, you should have been more careful. You have to make sure of what you do, but you can't be poking around. That 5-minute timer means business, right? So it's push forward, but commit. make decisions, and that's why I love this game so much. And it's also really good when you figure out what the game wants from you, that you have to meet it on its terms. You feel like a badass when you start snapping off jumps and double. I felt so cool. I felt like I broke the game with that stage 4 Hydra boss, because I realized I could jump backwards and then hold forward and start firing forwards at it. But I'm going to keep going backwards because that's the only direction I can move. I started jumping. I'm committed to that jump, but I can still fire in the other direction. That was like discovering stuff like that. I know that sounds really simple, that a lot of games have mechanics like that, but like for me to discover something, it's like, oh, I felt like I was getting away with something. Right. So it was very empowering for me to do stuff like that. And again, I spent the entire summer trying to beat this game, and I did. It is one of the most satisfying game victories I've ever had, maybe ever still. I don't think anything could ever top that, right? For me. It just was incredible. Again, there's stuff in this game that the other games do that just do it better. I love that you can't, it's like most of the enemies are randomized when they're going to pop out. It's not a game you can memorize. You just have to get better at dealing with those enemies and knowing the stuff that they can do. Right? Yeah, I'm not even sure what else I can say about ghouls and ghosts and goblins that has it. But yeah, this is definitely my favorite in the series. You know what really upset me actually when I got this game home? Because again, I was used to ghouls and ghosts where you could fire up. You can't fire up in Super Ghouls and Ghosts. So I was like, this game is bullshit. I can't even, why am I even playing this, right? Because that was my favorite thing at the arcade. You go to those buzzards in the tree and you just kind of zap them all with your lance, and the feathers come down. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. Yeah, it's excellent, right? But this game, you can't do that. I was like, the different focus of it, right? It's just excellent. Anyway, I'll shush about, I could talk about any Capcom game for hours, right? And it's my... I guess there's two of the 3 games on here are Capcom games with Mega Man Base as well. But I'm sorry, they're just the best. And Super Ghouls and Ghosts was the best to me.
No, we're mad at Capcom now.
Oh yeah, we are. That's right. Sorry, Darren.
Shout out to Darren.
Sorry.
No.
I'll just chime in real quick. Like I played the original arcade game. Then we got the NES version, and it was so cruel. Anyone that's played that knows how cruel that version is.
Yeah.
I actually beat it, although you don't really beat it because it's one of those you have to play it again. And I was like, immediately turned that thing off. To beat that game, I had like in a classic board game, there's like, is it 90% luck and 10% skill or invert? Like there's always like, is it luck versus skill? That's one of those games where it's like, there's so much luck involved. And by luck, I mean like just cruelty. Like, you're going to get hit no matter what. You can't climb this ladder because the bad guy is in this position, and now you literally just have to die and start that section over again. I don't even know how I grinded through it. I don't want to talk about that ever again. We had the Genesis, so we had the Genesis version. So that's the one I'm most familiar with. I actually think the Genesis version is quite good. I think there's more people that are on the, like if you're going to pick one or the other, I feel like I hear more about the SNES game is like the one people love, the one you just spoke to. But the Genesis game is great for anyone that hasn't played that as well. I would check it out. I've never finished the SNES one just because I've I've emulated it and never gave it the time because now I'm aging and I'm like less patient, but I really feel like I should devote the time someday.
Definitely try it. It's so unique in this series. You know what really spoke to me about the way Capcom thinks of Super Ghouls and Ghosts? I remember one of the PSP Capcom collections, right? And those are arcade collections. They had Super Ghouls and Ghosts on there. It was like the only home game they allowed on there because they wanted to have because they had Ghosts and Goblins, they had Ghouls and Ghosts. They wanted to complete the trilogy. I think they themselves probably fashioned it as an arcade. I mean, I'm not saying they made it as an arcade game and then they just made a Super Nintendo version, say fuck the arcade. I'm just saying that they fashioned that way from the beginning, So and it shows. It really, really shows.
That's an awesome pick, and that's a powerful. I know that I had a similar sort of feeling when I was younger when I beat actually Zelda 2, which was such a pain in the ass, and I just know that feeling. I still can remember that feeling of I can't believe I fucking did this, you know?
Yeah. I know what Brian is talking about with luck, right? Because like the only time I ever beat Ninja Gaiden was on Wii Virtual Console. I never managed to do it as a kid. And I remember one time I just had a lucky run and I fucking did it and I actually beat the game. I will never do that again. I know I will never do that again. Like I feel like that was my one time where I was going to do it and that was it. So
The first one?
yeah, the original Ninja Gaiden, yeah.
You could beat the first one.
I don't know, man. I think the other two are way easier. Maybe it's just me, but Jesus, yeah.
For me, 3 is like it. I've never gotten very far in Ninja Gaiden 3.
3 is
We're not
kind
here
of
to talk
brutal.
about
3 is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
3 is rough, especially the American version.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Andrew, can you end us strong?
sure, I can try to transition a little bit just because I don't have a lot of experience with that ghouls and ghosts and goblins. I guess we've just started saying. I mean, Dre, we talked about the other day, like that's the one where we're just like, I don't know, Makaimura, Dai Makaimura, like it's easier to remember the Japanese name.
But I didn't want to confuse.
I'm
the
similar.
public, so.
Yeah, it's I think there was definitely like confusion as a kid where I was like, is one of these feels like a parody of the other, but they both say Capcom on it, so it's probably fine. Like one of them seems like a knockoff. Just going by the names, obviously not the the quality of the games themselves. But yeah, I've just those games are so very mean. And I know that they can be learned. I know my friend Mikhail has spent a lot of time routing Dai Makaimura to the point that he's gotten very, very good at it. But it took him a long time to do that.
When Capcom Arcade Stadium came out, that's when I really sat down with that, and that's when I played it for a long, long time. I love that game. Like, it's so good. It's almost as good as Super Ghouls and Ghosts, almost, but like not quite. I'd still put Super above it. But yeah, the second one, also a super, super excellent game.
Yeah, I just my experience with that franchise lies more in like I don't know Maximo and Demon's Crest and like Gargoyle's Quest and stuff like that.
Yeah,
just being an asshole. I just hate Maximo. I'm sorry. I love the other ones you said.
It's also wild to like talking about things that looking at them in the context of their era. Looking at the first Makaimura, like that's one of the first action platformers. Like the reason that Castlevania is the way that it is because they were taking notes off this game. Mm-hmm. It's like basically you have Pac-Land comes out and then the road diverges and it's like on one side you have Mario and the other you have Ghosts and Goblins and then those just start like going down, parallel but branching off in different directions.
Thank you, Pac-Land, I think.
I like me a Pac-Land.
Yeah, yuck. I'm sorry.
I learned like 2 months ago.
It's so cursed.
Run in Pac-Land, and I was like, "What? This unlocks everything! It's a completely different video game now."
I like the fairy. I like the fairy in the flower field. That's fun.
Sure, but it's a very strange thing. Anyway, point is, I almost came here talking about Demon's Crest, and then I was like, that feels a little bit disingenuous because I've never actually spent the time to get that far into that game.
Excellent game, though.
It is one of the best 16-bit Mega Mans that Capcom made. For a game that's much closer to like ActRaiser in a lot of ways. Anyway, the actual game that I brought here to talk about is more representative of a series and parodying myself again, but I did at least bring one North American Super Nintendo cart with me today, and that is Wizardry 5: A Heart of the Maelstrom.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I changed into this this wizardry hoodie before we started recording.
So got the fit on, yeah.
Thematically appropriate. We got the Super Nintendo key art or the Super Metroid key art shirt underneath, but that's anyway.
Take it off, baby.
I called the shot there because like someone's gonna say it. Anyway, I like wizardry a whole lot. I like me a dungeon crawler. I like games that are unnecessarily cruel, in like ways that are funny. I like leveling up and seeing a stat or two go down and being like, what, why, and then just having to like write that in my head of just like, I don't know, that guy just forgot how to cast a spell. He's not very good today at hitting stuff, whatever. But also more than anything, like I love getting old versions of wizardry that come on like either cartridges or some kind of magnetic media like floppy disks and stuff, because they have old saves on them and people's old characters and stuff like that. And I was firing up this copy yesterday, and I've had this for years, but there are still old saves on it. And
Love it.
It was like, do you want to recall this party? And it was a bunch of characters that were named like Eric, Cartman, and a lot of like Stan. It's all just like, oh yeah, this is somebody was playing this in the 1990s.
Oh yeah.
Bart, stuff like, it's very much that. But yeah, I mean, like, Wizardry 5 came out on the Apple II. It's an old video game. All of these are old video games. The first one came out in 1981, and they largely have not changed much since then. Aside from, making them easier to look at and making the information easier to parse or whatever. But the actual games themselves have not changed a tremendous amount. But the combo of Wizardry, Black Onyx, and Ultima all kind of hitting around the same time in Japan when they did is why we have like RPGs the way that we do. And that's a whole other, very long conversation. But I'm just going to drive right past that entire thing and just... One of my favorite things about video games is inhabiting a space, a place, a digital space, and moving around in it. And it's kind of difficult to achieve that level of quote unquote immersion, for lack of a better word, in a 2D game. We were talking about this earlier with Super Metroid and how the art in there serves to elevate the kind of atmospheric tendencies that they had already been building with the first two Metroid games. And to kind of put more personality onto it. Whereas Wizardry is basically wireframe hallways, and always has been. And, obviously this has like, bitmap graphics, whatever, like the walls have textures now. But it is, you're not literally moving in first person, but you are the camera, the window in which you see things through with all of the menu stuff that you actually interact with around it. The actual viewport is a first person perspective that moves on a tile base. If you've ever played like Phantasy Star 1 and 2, same thing.
Sort of Vermilion.
Yeah, totally. It's sort of, that's a game that I really wish was as cool as parts of it are.
I love it, actually. I really love that game. Yeah.
I love aspects of it, but anyway.
I just love that Yu Suzuki did it, but anyway, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, that's another conversation.
Yeah, anyway, Wizardry 5, it's a Wizardry game. There's not a lot there that's tremendously different from anything else. Like I said, it's representative of just a series here, but there were... the series has always been much more popular in Japan than it was here, despite having started here. So there are a lot more entries over there that have been, slowly receiving unofficial translations over the years ever since. But there were a good chunk of console ports around the time. The first 3 of them were on NES, stuff like that. They kept remaking the first chunk of them with higher fidelity visuals, generation by generation. To the point that by the time you're on the PS1 and Saturn, you're playing the old games, but they have 3D environments and really much higher resolution, higher detail, pixel art and stuff like that. But no, it's just a really grognardy ass, graybeard ass dungeon crawler that just doesn't pull a lot of punches, and it's just mean and stupid and simple and straightforward, and I love it. I love being lost in a dark, dank dungeon full of skeleton monsters and such, and rolling new characters only for them to die in the first or second combat encounter 15 times. That kind of thing. And just having difficulty getting out of the first floor.
Yeah,
but
I love shit like that.
Right, because once you get past that first hump, the rest of it's usually kind of, relatively speaking, smooth sailing, because by that point you've got a party that can at least get through that first area. It's not like a Etrian Odyssey kind of thing where they kind of start to smooth those bumps out for you a little bit. Although Etrian Odyssey does, let you draw a map as you go, whereas Wizardry 5 on the Super Nintendo does not. So you need to bust out some graph paper and a pen the old-fashioned way and get it done. So yeah, I don't know.
Definitely did do that. I did that with the original Phantasy Star. I love first-person dungeon crawlers. I did that with Shining in the Darkness.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna play Shining the Holy Ark soon. I hope
better
it's
video game.
yeah, okay, yeah. I've never played it before, so
Oh,
okay. Fine time preview on Flashback 64. I lined up. We're gonna do me and someone are gonna do like the Shining. We're gonna do Shining the Holy Ark, Shining Wisdom, and Shining Force 3. So we're gonna do them all. Anyway, but yeah, I'm looking forward to playing that because I love these games. I like I said, the original Phantasy Star. That's why I mentioned Sword of Vermilion, which I do really enjoy. I played. What did I play on PSP? El Menage. What the hell is it called? It starts with an E. Anyway, that was one of those just nasty fucking games. Like you're talking about. It's basically wizardry.
Like once you get into that era, it's just they're cranking those things out.
Oh yeah. There's a lot on PSP, but it was what I just got it for like $5 or something on the on PSN. I was like, sure, I'll try this one. I was like, this game sucks. I love it. Right? Yes. It was so awful to me. It was so mean. I loved it, and I love Etrian Odyssey as well. So, totally. But I've never. My point is, I've never ever have played a wizardry ever. So yeah, so this is something I actually need to like explore, and I know it's like you said, there's a million of them, and a number of them are on Steam. I mean, I don't know if they actually work, but like who knows? Yeah, but I would love to get into this big time. I know they just did that remake of the first one, right? Digital Eclipse last year, I think. Yeah, so maybe I should start there.
That sounds like a good start. I was curious about that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest place to start. They seem very concerned with helping on-ramp people and provide a lot of context and stuff for that game and what you do in it and why it mattered and stuff like that. That I think makes it much
cool.
easier than just cannonballing into the deep end and hoping for the best, which is a really great way to bounce off of entire genres.
Well, that's what I did on PSP for sure when I played that game. I can't remember the name of. So yeah, it was like, whoa, right? I wish I had started with the Etrian Odyssey or something that's a little more a little bit more of a ramp up, but I didn't. So, but no, I love this genre. So what you're saying is very appealing.
Yeah, I know a lot of the values and stuff are tweaked for specifically like Nintendo home console versions and over here as well, to the point that they're significantly less cruel. Like Wizardry 5 on the Super Nintendo, published by Capcom, by the way. Forgot about that.
Weird.
Yeah, there you go, Capcom.
That's the reason why I even know about it, because they put. I saw the advertisements in magazines because Capcom was all over them shits. So I remember seeing Wizardry 5 a lot. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, it's just it's the one that I happen to have on the shelf, so I grabbed it. But I just if you want an old crunchy pixely wizardry game, that is a less rude one to start on. You can totally sit down and play this and have a wonderful time on your Super Nintendo. It's not the place I would recommend starting with these necessarily, but I'm sure a lot of people did back in the day. And I think if you are open to that kind of thing, it's totally doable.
Well, I've played a number of them, so I have experience. So, I mean, I feel like I would get along with it just fine. But yeah, if it's like your first one, ooh, baby, might be rough. But yeah.
But yeah, it's go for it.
That's such a good final game for our list.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff on the Super Nintendo. It's a lot of contrast.
I love it's not because I dislike the game. I love that we completely ghosted Super Mario World. That's incredible. Say that, yeah. I love that we did that. That's really funny.
I think we can all agree that's a fantastic game, right?
It is. It's fucking great, man. I love it. So what can I say?
And we're gonna talk about it in this podcast feed someday. So don't worry about it. We all love it.
One day I will beat that one ghost house in the middle that has been keeping me from finishing that game for literally my entire life.
Wow. Okay.
There's one level I've just never been able to pass in that game because I'm a stupid idiot. So I have problems with.
And Brian hates Super Mario World, right?
No, it's just one of those games that's like, let me just set the record. So I played it when it first came out. I enjoyed it. I saw there was all these beautiful things they did that they didn't do in the past. Although, Super Mario Bros. 3 already excellent on its own. It had no lasting power for me. I never felt like, oh, I got to go back and play it again. I'm like, I did it. I'm done. Kind of like Super Mario Wonder. I'm like, awesome game. I never need to touch it again. And it faded from my memory as soon as I was done with it. But I still thought it's like a 9 out of 10 game. It's great,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mario 3 is cooler.
Mario
is.
3 is my favorite game of all time. So yeah, you're not going to hear an argument from me. Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
If I'm picking a Mario, it's 2. So I don't know what
Okay, that's valid.
Hey,
that was the
you
one
wanna
that I played a lot on
yeah.
NES as a kid. Like I played all 3 of them quite a bit, but 2 was the one that I was just like, yeah, this is weird.
You
It's a
fucking
weird
weirdo.
game.
You love that weird shit.
Yeah, you're not
don't you?
surprised.
Obviously, we love Mario here on this show. Obviously, he's kind of one of our figureheads, obviously, or maybe he's the figurehead of
He
the
is the
show.
figurehead.
So we respect him and all his outings. His karting on the Super Nintendo is fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, we support all the Mario that you can get, even the bad ones. I'm not saying that's not Super Mario World. I'm not saying that about that.
I was gonna say, okay, fine, you beat me to it.
You're talking about like the time machine or whatever the. What am I thinking of? Mario's
Time
Mario's
Machine?
missing.
something. Which I don't remember what's on Super Nintendo. And what's
Luigi's.
like,
No, Mario's Time Machine is on Super Nintendo. I'm pretty sure
I don't remember how many of those are
That's-
like edutainment software.
it definitely is. Yeah,
Hey, I support that too.
he's
I
the
have to.
world's biggest
Hell,
Sega
on
Pico
the
fan.
CDI? Yeah.
I will be shot if I don't. Much like you with what was it? Big problems. What was
Big,
it,
big
guys?
challenge.
Oh, okay. Well, on that note, I think we should probably wrap it up. I'm starting. It's been a long ep, and I'm losing my mind.
Cool.
Thanks everyone for coming on. Let's do a round of plugs. Andrew, what do you want to plug?
Oh gosh. What do I want to plug? Retrogamebooks.com.
Yeah. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Let's do a round of plugs for retro game books. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I got some Digital Foundry stuff that just went public. That Reckless video I did with John a while back is on the public feed now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into the Reckless / Runabout series of drive around, break stuff with the car games. Just trying to think, like anything else that I have is like not gonna be ready for a while. So
Look up this man, Andrew Elmore, on Bandcamp. He makes a number of excellent musics. I've bought a number of them, and they're great. He'll never say it, so I'm going to say it for him. Go fucking listen to that shit.
thanks. Buddy.
Listen to Wave Beam. I'm always listening to that. Honestly,
Listening
like
to
that's
that
like
every
just
Wednesday at noon.
yeah, true.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm going to plug. Go watch Nick McConnell's Instruction Derby on
Yeah, hell yeah.
twitch.tv/Nick McConnell.
Andre, what do you got?
I do a show called Fine Time. Have you heard? I may have mentioned it a couple times actually during this. And yeah, me and my two friends, Steve, and Kevin, we talk about whatever we want, new games, old games, whatever we are authentically playing, because that's the interesting part. Not just exactly what's coming out, but just whatever we are playing. That could be new or old. We love to cover stuff that happens. We covered the state of play that happened a couple days ago of this recording. You know, we love to do stuff like that. We love to play little quiz games, whatever sounds fun at that moment. Hell, sometimes we don't talk about video games, right? Very occasionally we do movies or anime or something. So come have a fine time with us. Also, future plug, I definitely agreed. Not the only reason why I agreed to this. I would have done this anyway, Goo. But I have recorded actually in the future there will be a solo episode of me talking about my 5 favorite Super Nintendo games, which is why I was like really primed to do this, because it had just been on my mind, you know. And I scripted that out like last fall. I recorded it a couple months ago. I don't know when that will come out, but look forward to that. I will probably mention a couple of the games that I talked about here.
Nice.
So
just skip
yeah.
to the last like 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not talk Mega Man and Bass though, but definitely Super Ghouls and Ghosts and Hyperzone are on there. So yeah, if you want to hear that in the future, tune in to Fine Time.
If Hyperzone wasn't on there, I would have called in a wellness check on you or something.
It's the first game. It's the very first game I talked about. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on still and talking about it, even though don't want to spoil your content or anything.
No, I feel like that. No, I don't think of it that way at all. This is a completely different. I mean, even if if I said the exact same thing on that episode, it doesn't matter. You know, it's fun.
It's somehow word for word.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, Fine Time is a fine time. I love it. I tell you, I think every Thursday I'm listening to it at work. It helps me get through the day, makes it less shitty. So
You're
Thank
so
you.
fucking awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. And yeah, one more for Retro Game Books. Brian, plug away once more.
Oh, well, you all already did it for me. So, I mean, the only thing I'll add to that is we're on, lots of different social media, but most active on Blue Sky. So if you want to keep up with things or say hello or argue with me about my taste in games, please head over there and do that. But I'll plug something obscure instead. I made a Left 4 Dead 2 campaign about 13, 14 years ago, back when the first year when that came out. It's called Tour of Terror. So if you're interested in escaping from a zombie-infested Europe, check out Tour of Terror. It's probably old looking now. I don't know what to say, but it was the first year that game came out, originally developed for the original Left 4 Dead, and then all of a sudden they're like, surprise, we're coming out with a sequel, even though it's only been like 2 weeks. Then I had to pivot and script some events using some of their other stuff. I never even played Left 4 Dead 2. I played it for like 20 minutes because I didn't have time because I was trying to get this thing done. Anyway, it's like the last kind of game development-y thing I've done, and I've made $0 on it, and it was all for the joy and the pleasure of knowing people play it. So check it out.
Beautiful.
That's super cool. That's excellent.
Well, if you play it and you like it, go pre-order the second book, and then that'll kind of pay it forward in a way.
I met Brian on Twitter because of our mutual love of Rygar, and he has done a Rygar book. And I have the Rygar book, and it is excellent.
So, hell yeah.
Yeah, my favorite 8-bit soundtrack of all time is Rygar. Absolutely, might be my favorite NES game.
Good.
A damn good one.
So absolutely,
cool.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to say about the Super Nintendo before we close out real quick that I forgot about while I was trying to whittle down my picks here. A lot more STGs on there that are good than I think about. Like when I think of 16-bit shooters, I think a lot of like Mega Drive and PC Engine. There's a lot of good stuff on the Super Nintendo. You got your Axelays, you got some Dariuses, you got a Thunder Spirits.
You're a Darius sayer. I forgot.
I said Darius for so long, and then I eventually started trying to train myself to say the quote unquote correct way, even though it looks wrong. Whatever. Anyway,
I say Darius. I don't give a fuck. Everyone can yell at me.
I think most people are gonna be yelling about the Mario thing.
We shafted Mario. No, I don't know. I will have to. I always shit on 16-bit home console shmups, and maybe I shouldn't do that. There's probably a lot more. I don't know. I think
Genesis is what you should.
I think. Well, yeah. See, I didn't really have one growing up, and but I play. Obviously, everyone else did. I play a lot of shmups, but I don't know. I think Laylancer flip my brain or something like that, because once I played that game I'm like, maybe there's more to this than I thought. And then I wrote about Axelay. We both wrote about Axelay for Retro Game for the SNES book here on Retro Game Book. So yeah, maybe I should just shut up. Shut up so Goo can end the episode.
I was like, it's off the track.
Sorry.
No, thank you all for joining. Thanks for your time. It was a great action-packed episode. And I'll go follow all these guys on Blue Sky. And thanks everyone for listening, and see you later.
Happy birthday, Rygar.
Happy birthday, Rygar.
Bye.
And Blanca.